these homes should be seized, and zero compensation should be given to the previous owners. Zilch. You tried to profit from making the price of living in our community skyrocket. You deserve to lose that investment. You deserve to go broke. You scumbags.
Today I'm going to debunk. I'm going to do my best to debunk the landlords are parasites. Hashtag trend, viral, whatever you have that's going around out there. So if you go on YouTube and type in landlords are parasites, the #1 video that pops up is from Mr. Slime, a activist. He's a self-described socialist, anarchist, leftist who's from Toronto, Canada, and he has some very strongly worded opinions about landlords. We are contemptuous, exploitative, rent-seeking, murderous, hostage-taking, evil people. Scumbags. He uses every single one of those adjectives in his video. I'll go ahead and let you watch it for yourself. A couple things before we get started. I'm going to go ahead and cut through his video a little bit because there's times when he either cuts away to a joke that's completely unrelated and is like a long 2 to 3 minute skit, not necessarily pertinent to this argument. And then there's also a bunch of times where he talks about Canada-specific issues, laws in Toronto, Canada. I want to talk about the larger overarching theme of, is being a landlord wrong? Is being a landlord disgraceful? Should it continue to be legal, or should it be made illegal, outlawed, and we should all be hauled off to the guillotines or gallows? Guys, let me know how you think I'm doing in this debate or in this debunked video. Leave a comment down below if you agree with him or if you agree with me, if I missed a point, or if you think I'm just completely wrong. Hey, I am open to having my mind changed, so sit tight and enjoy.
Hello, I'm Thopslop. Today we're talking about landlords. Landlords are bad. Socialists have always been against rent-seeking. Now let me get 3 things out of the way right out the jump, because I can hear you tippity-tap typing up all your little comments. #1, I don't think all landlords are bad people. Like I said about cops, it does not matter to me if an individual landlord is a good person who will go to heaven. The institution that they take part in by being a landlord is what I take issue with specifically.
Okay, hold on. Just right out the gate, he is fully against landlords and also against cops. So apparently I'm literally this man's kryptonite, or maybe potentially 2 wrongs cancel out and make a right. So Mr. Slime, you want to hang out sometime? You, me, we'll get some coffee down in Seattle. It'd be cool.
I'm not making a judgment on anyone's entire moral character. I'm making a judgment on this particular action that they're taking. And it's not because I'm just bitter about some bad landlord experience I've had in the past. I mean, I've certainly had my fair share, like I'm sure all of you have. But
okay, I want you to remember that. He's not making a specific judgment on anyone's moral character, he's just judging this one action. So I want you to watch the rest of his video and listen to the words that he uses to describe landlords or property owners and see if you think he's maybe judging your entire moral character or just one action.
My current landlords kind of own, like they charge me well below market price, like a quarter of market price, and they're friendly and helpful and all around pleasant and decent people who have real jobs in addition to renting to me. That doesn't change the fact that the institution of rent-seeking is fundamentally immoral and just as exploitative as siphoning the surplus value of a worker's labor.
Okay, well that's a lot of big words. Siphoning the surplus value of a worker's labor. Well, yeah, I'm definitely not going to butt intellectual heads with this guy. I'm going to go ahead and give the synonym award to him. He's got a bigger thesaurus built into his mind than I do. I'm not even going to try. That being said, he's already said that we're immoral, and he's not going to give a definition for rent-seeking at any point in this video, just so you know I have already watched the video. He's not going to define rent-seeking, so I assume we can just infer that he is referencing any and all landlording. Anytime someone owns property and rents it to someone else, that is rent-seeking in his definition.
#2, often people will say that rent-seeking is justified because the landlord does their part by paying for the mortgage and paying for repairs, which is not true. Tenants pay for both of those things because the money that the landlord uses to pay for those things was collected from their tenants. The landlord is not paying for jack. They're spending their tenants' money. Furthermore, that money that they spent to pay off their mortgage generates equity for them and diddly squat for the tenant. If I took $1,000 from you and used $400 of it to buy you a Nintendo Switch, am I doing you a favor? Is it okay for me to do that because I bought you a Nintendo Switch?
Okay, so this is like a business 101, right? Every single business that exists on the planet pays for their repairs, pays for their maintenance fees, pays for their lease, pays for their expenses out of the bottom line of whatever product they sell. If you go down to a car dealership, the car dealership is going to sell you a car for 20 grand, but it only cost the dealership 14 grand to get it. So what do they do with that $6,000 spread? Well, a portion of it goes to the salesperson, a portion of it goes to the general management, a portion of it goes to the cost of the building and repairs for the building. That's how all businesses work. Anything that is sold is marked up from what it actually costs and beyond just what a profit margin is to include enough money for you to cover repairs and expenses. So why he singles out the business of being a landlord and owning property, somehow landlords are evil for building into the cost of rent a few percent for, you most people, 10% for vacancies, 10% for maintenance, and then of course a profit margin of usually somewhere hopefully like 10%, a couple $100 a month in cash flow. That's how business works. That's just how business works.
And number 3, for the brain geniuses in the comments telling me, just buy a home if I don't like it. Gee, wish I'd thought of that. Let me just check on computer. Yup, looks like the whole housing market has become completely turbo-fucked because it's more profitable for global investment firms to charge us all rent than sell us a permanent home. You ding-dongs.
Okay, but he's hilarious. I genuinely actually like this guy's channel. Okay, I have watched several of his videos, probably at least 15 of them at this point. He's a relatively popular content creator. He's growing every day. I like his sense of humor. I like the dry sense of humor. I like the salty, witty pessimism. That's the type of humor that I like. Even though I don't agree with probably 99.9% of the stuff that comes out of his mouth, I got no problem with the guy. I think he's funny. That being said, his argument that he just made, I mean, it's a little bit frustrating, right? One of the benefits of having available rental properties, apartments or duplexes that you don't own is because houses are incredibly expensive. They are. Based on that graph and based on just what you know, it's extremely expensive to buy a house in downtown Seattle where I work. To the tune of $800,000 or $900,000 is the average median price. Whereas if I rent, if I have an apartment, I can still live in the same area, but I can usually get like a 30 and sometimes 50% discount on what it would be for me to buy a property down there. That is a benefit to having people rent. So it's just, okay, let's let him continue.
Now for posterity, I want to mention that I'm recording this video in the middle of the 2020 quarantine because of COVID-19, and there's a lot of talk going around about a rent strike or the state mandating a rent moratorium. I'm not going to hold my breath for the latter. While these discussions certainly inspired me to talk about this subject, because it turns out that a lot of my fellow leftists have some wild ideas on the subject, it is not simply during times of crisis where this institution becomes immoral. These times of crisis bring it into sharper relief, but it's always immoral to practice rent-seeking. People need to...
Okay, that's a good point that he makes right there, right? Because in other words, he's not just saying that because people are dealing with the virus issue and things like that, that's the reason he has these beliefs. He's had these beliefs prior to, and he's going to continue these beliefs afterwards, right? It's always, as he put it, it's always immoral to practice rent-seeking, which, again, is fundamentally disagree, but we'll get into those reasons in a little bit here.
A place to live, all of the time. It is a physiological need. It is at the bottom of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There should not ever be homeless people, particularly...
Okay, let's go back and take a quick look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
But it's always immoral to practice rent-seeking. People need a place to live, all of the time. It is a physiological need. It is...
Okay, so I'm pulling back up his pyramid. So real quick, for those of you out there who don't know what Maslow's hierarchy of physiological needs are, essentially it's kind of like I think it's psychology, right? Essentially, you have to have this base level of needs met before you can progress to the next level. And ultimately, the ultimate goal is, I guess, inner peace or happiness or fulfillment, one of those Zen type things out there in the ether, okay? So if we take a look here at the bottom level of physiological needs, that he's saying you should not have to pay for housing or shelter because it's a base need that we all have to have. Well, let's take a look at this bottom level. You've got air, water, food, shelter, clothing, and reproduction. Okay, we don't pay for air. I'll give him that. That's just something you breathe. But we pay for water. I mean, whether you have the Walmart brand like me, or you're going to upgrade to Fiji or Voss or ridiculous smart water that's very expensive, or you just pay for the tap in your house. We pay for water. Food, again, you could buy your food from Walmart like I do to save a buck, or you could go to a really nice, and I'm going to show my Midwestern here, a really nice restaurant like the Olive Garden, because that's what's nice to me, but probably not to some of you guys. Shelter. Yes, you should pay for housing. Yes, you should pay for your shelter. Clothing, again, this Nike shirt costs way more than the large majority of shirts that I have. This was a present for me at Christmas a couple years ago, I think. But most of the shirts I buy come from Walmart. I get them in a bag of t-shirts that have like 3 different colors because I just don't care what I look like, and probably why I can't get a girlfriend, but that's a different video. Yes, it is frowned upon to pay for reproduction, unless it's like in vitro fertilization. But if we're talking about like reproduction, I mean, well, actually, I take it back. Hold on, because my guy, Mr. Thought Slime here, is from Canada, and last time I checked, brothels were technically legal up there. So maybe in Canada it's actually not frowned upon to pay for that, but here in America, it's not a good idea. You go one more rung up the ladder. Safety needs, personal security. Hey, for a lot of people, that means exercising your Second Amendment rights. Okay, and let me tell you, that's expensive. Employment. I suppose you don't pay for employment, but you certainly give a lot of your time, right? And if time equals money, you're giving tons of your time to get money back. But resources, property. I mean, I don't know what the resources is referring to. Like, I mean, property, like what, a car. I'm assuming resources would be kind of falling in line with property, which obviously you pay for things like a car, or I don't know, a couch, video games, entertainment, right? And then there's health, okay? And I think we all know here in America we pay for health care, right? Whether it's through private insurance or your taxes. And in Canada, yeah, they have socialized medicine, right? The government takes care of their health care, but the large majority of Canadians that I know, and I have several friends who are from Canada, I used to do work up there, still have private health insurance for things like dental work, for elective surgeries. So the funny thing is that these bottom 2 rungs on Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid are made up almost completely and entirely of things that you do pay for. The things that you don't pay for are those top 3 rungs. Things like friendship or intimacy. Well, again, intimacy, but friendship, family, sense of connection, respect, self-esteem, recognition, freedom, the desire to become the most one can be. These are all like spiritual things or emotional things that you don't pay for. So it just seems like a very odd line of logic and reasoning for him to suggest that you shouldn't have to pay for housing because it's on the bottom rung when you pay for everything else down there on those. I don't know. If I'm missing his point, or if you think I'm wrong, leave a comment down below, because this seems like the dumbest logic you could possibly use to make this argument. I mean, you literally pay for all that. So leave a comment down below with what you think, because I'm curious to hear it.
Is at the bottom of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There should not ever be homeless people, particularly when there are more homes than people. The idea that we should pay to be housed, or to have any of our basic human needs met, without which we will almost certainly die.
Okay, well then that's pretty telling right there. I mean, he goes on to say we shouldn't have to pay for any of our basic needs. So I guess the entire bottom 2 rungs of that pyramid you should never have to pay for. And since you literally can't pay for like things on the top 3, I guess money should no longer exist and we don't pay for anything. I mean, I know he's a self-described socialist, anarchist, leftist, so in his utopian world, again, not to get political here, in America, most people who are on either side of the aisle still believe in small business. I mean, whether you're Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, they both still say that small business is good. So I don't know where he falls on the spectrum. I'm not somebody who gets into political arguments, but somehow defending the, I guess, right for those 10 things that were listed on the bottom of that pyramid to potentially be made into businesses that people profit off of. Apparently, I have to defend that to Mr. Slime here. Interesting, I suppose. I guess in his perfect world that you wouldn't pay for anything, which is odd. And then of course there's the argument for homeless people, which is a very frustrating argument to hear. Yes, there's 9 million units and 4 million homeless people. We should just seize the property and give it to the homeless people. Let me be the first to tell you, as somebody who is an officer in the city in America that has the second highest homelessness population, okay, not all of these people are homeless because they couldn't afford rent and were evicted. Okay, there is huge lack of mental health services here in the United States. People that have huge mental health issues and they can't get the help that they need, or they refuse to get the help that they need. And then the next biggest issue is the opioid crisis. And the homelessness lifestyle complements the feeding of the addiction of the opioid crisis. These people need treatment, and it's very frustrating because I work with people literally on a daily basis. I've spoken with hundreds, if not thousands, of homeless people, and we offer them services, we offer them help, and they say no. And we can't force them to. We can't force them to get the help. At least not here. We can't. There are people who are voluntarily homeless. Not everybody, obviously, but to suggest that somehow being a landlord and the business practice of owning rental properties is the sole cause of homelessness in the entire country does an extreme disservice to some of these larger underlying issues like the opioid crisis and like mental health issues that are grossly neglected by our political system or by our culture or by our society, what have you. This is a reckless oversimplification of an extremely complex issue. And honestly, this is a very smart guy, and he should know better than that. He is just taking a big bad boogeyman and using it to scare people into thinking that there shouldn't be renters.
Is unfathomably cruel. There is absolutely no moral justification for this, and the only reason that we as a society tolerate it is because the people who own most of the homes also tend to make the laws and dictate the boundaries of acceptable public discourse. Every person who dies of exposure on the street has been murdered by an economic system that prioritizes someone's right to make a meager profit on Airbnb over the lives of its most vulnerable people. Every hotel with an empty room has killed that person for the price of about $137 a night. That's all a human life is worth.
Okay, again, so remember, he's not making a judgment on your moral character. Just one action you've taken, you murderer, because you value $137 more than someone's life. First of all, why are you going after the hotel industry? The hotel industry is completely separate from long-term shelter landlords provide, what a rental or an apartment is, right? Let's say we're in his perfect utopia. Everybody lives in their own house that was given to them by the government, and they never ever have to pay a single bill somehow. Somehow that works. Okay, what happens if you want to travel? I live in Seattle. You know what? I really want to go to New York, but I don't know anybody in New York. I want to go. Where do I stay while I'm there if there's no hotels? Hotels are in the business of giving you an opportunity to stay somewhere when you travel. They're not providing housing, long-term housing, right? I mean, these are similar industries, but they're very much different. So it's kind of a difficult argument to make. And again, the incredible hyperbolic statement of you're a murderer if you own a hotel and you didn't give up your room to somebody who's homeless and they had to sleep out on the street and they caught Big Rona and now they died. But it's seems a little over the top, Mr. Slime.
If you're against homelessness, and since you're presumably not some sort of evil hobgoblin, you should be, then you are against the institution of rent-seeking. You are against landlords. Homelessness could not exist without landlords.
Okay. I feel like I barely let this guy talk at all. This is an extremely frustrating debate tactic, the straw man tactic, I guess, that both political parties use against each other all the time, right? Here's a really, really bad thing that's happening. Here's my solution to how to fix that really bad thing. If you disagree with my solution, then clearly you must be for this bad thing happening, because you couldn't possibly come up with your own solution. You couldn't possibly have good intent in your heart, because if you did, you would agree with me without questioning or debating, and you would do exactly what I want to fix that solution and not come up with your own decision. And if you do, I'm going to use the media and social media, and I'm going to say that you're evil and clearly are in favor of the bad thing happening. And we see this from both sides of the political spectrum, right? whether it be poverty exists. A lot of people have generational poverty, and one side says, well, maybe we need to figure out how to teach these people better in school and how to get them better education around businesses and how to keep them from doing things that cause them to go into poverty, like teen pregnancy and stuff like that. And the other side says, well, we should have a whole bunch of social programs and we should just be giving the money to them and we should be giving, more food stamps and more Section 8 housing, which is what I grew up on. So don't say that I'm against that. That's how I grew up, extremely poor. And then both sides say, well, since you don't agree with us, clearly you want everyone to live in poverty for the rest of their lives, you dirtbags. And they just argue. It's dumb. You want to get to the same end point, and then you just instead demonize each other, and then have to go back to your constituents and say, get a load of these guys, these Republicans or these Democrats. Clearly they're evil. Am I right? Like, grow the flip up. This is a terrible way to argue. It's very frustrating, and he knows that. He is smart, all right? You do not have to agree with him 100%, or if you don't agree with him 100%, does not mean you're in favor of homelessness.
Homelessness could not exist if we as a society just stopped treating homes as something it was permissible to profit from the ownership or sale of. Suddenly, the parasitic class of venture capitalists who buy up thousands of vacant homes and let them languish unused so they can use them as collateral in an enormous speculation shell game would be eliminated. You wouldn't have foreign multinational corporations purchasing thousands of homes in your town and making them unlivable for working people. In cases like this, I firmly...
Okay, hold on. I agree with him on that point. It should be more difficult for foreign multinational conglomerate corporations to come in and buy up a bunch of property and push out your average everyday American. There should be some consumer protection from your average everyday American, whether that be, I don't know, raising the taxes or fees on these foreign companies to invest here, what have you. And I understand that that is a political stance, right? Well, we want their money here. Hey, at some point you do got to look out for your average person. And I have a very much protect America and Americans so that they can do what they want in their own country, right? Most countries make it hard for us to invest there. They're going to be extra tariffs, taxes, and paperwork and red tape to go. So, hey, that's just leveling the playing field in my mind. So I agree with them there.
Firmly believe that these homes should be seized and zero compensation should be given to the previous owners. Zilch. You tried to profit from making the price of living in our community skyrocket. You deserve to lose that investment. You deserve to go broke. You scumbags. But
okay. Aside from all of the catastrophic economic fallout that would happen if, I guess, the government, who is known for their altruism and wonderful decisions, the government will just come in and take all property that you don't live in. That sounds moral and like a good idea. And then he goes on to call you a scumbag after he's called you a murderer and a parasite. I'm feeling like it's more than just my actions. I'm starting to feel like you kind of are judging my entire moral character. Mr. Slime, okay? I'm telling you, it's going to be all right. I'm not that bad of a guy. I bet you and I would enjoy playing video games together, maybe going and watching a Sounders match, and I don't drink coffee, but we go to Starbucks together. Come down to Seattle, all right? We'll have a good time. You'll see that like there are nice people out there. Okay, I'll agree with you. There's dirtbag landlords and there's good landlords. You said your landlords were good. There's dirtbag tenants and there's great tenants. But this is how everything works in business, in all businesses, in all factions of life. There's good people and bad people, and then there's a whole myriad of people in between. Like, all right, back to his arguments.
But it's one thing to complain about the big mega corporations that are most of the landlords. It's quite another to complain about Joe, Jane, or Gene Schmo. Regular folk who rent out a little bit on the side to make ends meet. And while people like that may be less contemptible on the surface, they're no less exploitative. They are, as a class of people...
Okay, add to the list of insults. Contemptible and exploitative.
Holding you hostage.
And hostage taker.
You need a place to live. And sure, you don't have to pay any of them individually, but you gotta pay one of them. That makes the interests of the small landlord align with those of the big megacorporation and against you.
Okay, once again, that businesses, right? Whether you're a small mom-pop burger and fries place like Mikey's, the burger shop up in Everett that I like to go to, has good shakes, or you're McDonald's, a giant corporate franchise, of course they have the same interest. Their interest is to sell as much of their product as they can every day and make as much money as possible every day. And just because you're doing it on a small scale or a large scale doesn't inherently make you good or bad, right or wrong. There's good small businesses and there's terrible small businesses, and there's good big corporations and there's terrible big corporations. This is like basic economics.
Any legislation that protects tenants is deleterious to the bottom line of landlords, big and small alike. And they'll fight tooth and nail against any legislation or regulation that eats into their bottom lines, even if it means keeping you safe. The more profit they can extract from you, the better. And the more red tape and precautions they have to take, the less profit they can suck out of you. That is the nature of this relationship. It does not matter how kind or empathetic a person is. Once they step into that role, they are aligning their interests with capital against their tenants. If you think your landlord could resist this pressure, if you think they're too kind or too good of a person, ask yourself how kind they would be if you stopped paying them.
Okay, you walk into a Target and you start to flirt with a cute cashier girl, because I don't know what it is, man. Target just always has like the cutest employees, right? And okay, that's for a different video, okay? But the moral of the story is, you're being really friendly with the cashiers at Target, and they're really friendly back to you, and you buy your stuff, and they're happy to see you, and you're a regular customer, whatever. And then one day you decide to walk in there and grab an armful of groceries and not pay for anything and walk out. It doesn't matter how good your relationship with them is going to be. If one day you decide not to pay for something when you're supposed to pay for it, they're not going to be friendly. They're going to call the police. Well, first they might say, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And if you said, I just don't really feel like paying for groceries today. I just don't want to. Because it's a basic need and I should not have to pay for it. Target, how dare you ask me to? They're going to call the police because it's stealing. That's what it is. So yeah, I have a great relationship with my tenant. We chat all the time. He's been in quarantine forever because, of the freaking lockdowns and shutdowns and all this stuff. We chat when I mow the lawn. We've chatted about his yard. I know about his family life and stuff like that. But if all of a sudden he just decides to never pay rent again, yeah, I don't want to have to kick him out. I would hope that he comes to me if there's a problem. We can work it out. But if you don't pay your rent, then yes, you have to go, right? It's what I do in my normal job. It doesn't matter how nice someone is or how bad I might feel bad for them. If you beat your wife, you gotta go to jail for domestic violence. I understand you're frustrated. I get that you lost your job. I get that, you found out someone was cheating on you. I understand that all these other things and circumstances are really beating down on you. No pun intended. But you don't get to physically assault somebody for it. So turn around. We're gonna put some handcuffs on. We'll go sleep this off down at the jail. Or, that's just how there are consequences for actions.
Your relationship with them is a negotiation in which they will do everything they're legally able to do and anything they're not really legally able to do but they're confident they can get away with to get as much money as they can out of you. And in theory, you do everything you're able to do to fight back against them and make sure that you can keep as much of your money as possible.
Yes.
But in reality, you need to live somewhere. They have leverage over you. It is not an equal power dynamic. It is a lot easier to go a month without one rent check than it is to go a week without a home. Landlords absolutely
Okay. Okay. First of all, yes, it's much easier to go a month without a rent check as a landlord than it is for you, the tenant, to go a week without a home. It's also easier for you to go a week without a home than it is for you to go 3 days without food or 1 day without water. Just because you can only live 3 days without food still doesn't make it okay to go steal it. You may have to reach out for help or assistance, and the state has social welfare programs to help people in those cases. I grew up on food stamps. You know what social welfare program they have for housing? It's called Section 8 housing. I grew up on Section 8 housing because I came from an extremely impoverished family with 7 kids from 4 dads and 1 mom, and none of them were in the picture. There are programs to help people here, all right? That's how society works. We do take care of our own and take care of each other. But you don't have the right to steal. That's not okay. Polite society does not work that way. And it's not frustrating for me to know that there are certain things that are out of my reach that are too expensive for me. I would love to own a Tesla. I would love to drive one of Elon Musk's beautiful machines, but I don't hold him personally accountable for the fact that I can't afford to buy a $100,000 car. Maybe I will one day, maybe not. But I drive my crappy 1999 Ford pickup truck, and I don't do it with bitterness and discontent in my heart. Like this guy. Like, come on, man, come on.
To protect their interests. They know how to form advocacy groups to protect their interests, all the while working to make sure you can't do the same. They know how to lobby policymakers, and they know that in any bargain with you, they have all the chips and the full weight of the state at their back. And they can and will use that to put the squeeze on you, or to toss you from your home onto the street if you fight back even a little bit. Think about some of the nutso provisions we just accept as par for the course. You have to give your current landlord 2 months' notice before moving out, but no landlord renting to you is under any obligation to hold a property for 2 months so that you can get that settled.
Okay, hold on. All right. Leave a comment down below if I'm not understanding this right. You have to give a landlord 2 months' notice if you're going to move out. Yes, most of the time that's true. If you have a lease and the lease expires and you want to move out, you just let them know. And if it says 2 months, then yeah, you want to let them know with 2 months. But if for some reason you want that changed, you know that a lease can be changed, right? You can initial and sign things and make addendums. If you, the tenant, for whatever reason, want to only give 1 month, ask. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem signing that. That's not an issue for me. And a lease, usually are 12 months long, right? So you're anticipating that the lease will end at the end of that 12 months. And then at that point, it'll go month to month unless you sign a new lease. But why? And then he says that a landlord has no obligation to hold it. What are you talking about? If I sign a lease with my tenant and I put my tenant in a building and the tenant now I'm contractually obligated to let them stay in that building for the duration of their lease. And when the lease is up, I could choose to not renew it. I could choose to sell the property or something. Or if the lease is still active and say I want to get rid of the property, I could offer them a choice because they can voluntarily choose to leave the lease if we're both in agreement. Hey, tell you what, I want to sell this property. If I find you another property similar, would you be interested in looking somewhere else? Maybe if I paid for some of the rent, like 1 month rent, you'd have a month rent. You can make offer. I mean, that's how business works. Again, you can make offers to change things, and if it's all voluntary, then everybody's good. And if it's not voluntarily, then both sides are contractually obligated, including the landlord, to provide the housing I signed that I would provide.
When was the last time a landlord did a credit check on you? When was the last time you did a credit check on a landlord? When was the last time you had the time or ability to investigate a landlord's financial reliability? To ask for references from them. If you signed a contract...
Okay, so the point of doing a credit check is to see what your history of repaying loans or standing up and holding up to financial obligations you have, right? The landlord does not have a financial obligation to the tenant. I'm not supposed to be paying a certain sum of money every month to them. So why you would want to do a credit check on me, I'm not exactly sure. If you would like to ask for references, first of all, does he not know how Google works? If you live in an apartment building, Google the name of the apartment building. There's almost certain to be some sort of reviews, either they're Google reviews, you can find YouTube videos, or Yelp of the actual managers of the apartment building and what the apartment building is like living there. I mean, you can go on there and, 3 stars, 5 stars, 1 star, whatever it is. So yes, if you would like references, you can find them most of the time. And if you can't, maybe it's a small mom and pop place like me with no official business name on the name of the duplex I own. I suppose if you really wanted to, you could ask me and say, hey, I just want to see how you are as a landlord. Do you have any past tenants who could be used as references? And again, I would have to ask them because their privacy is respected. But if someone was willing to be a reference, then I wouldn't have any issue providing it. Again, I've never been asked that question. I've only been a landlord for a little over a year and a half, but and only over a couple different units at this point. It's kind of a weird question, I suppose, but I'm not against it. Even though he certainly wants to paint me and other people as though we are trying to hide something. I mean, I'm sure there are some people out there who are, but I'm not.
With someone because they held a gun to your head, that contract would be null and void. What is a lease if not a contract that you sign under threat of being tossed out onto the street? That is extortion.
Okay, so now we have extortion added to the list. as well as not only a hostage taker, but we're a hostage taker with a gun. And if you don't buy my property, if you don't sign this lease, well, then I'm gonna throw you out on the street. What world do you live in, my friend? I don't know how different Canada is from America, but I've been up to British Columbia plenty of times. It seems pretty similar. The people are nice. I don't know what's going on up there. But here, if you don't like the terms of the lease, you can go somewhere else. You can find a different property. You can ask for the terms of the lease to be changed. These are all different approaches that you can make to the same problem. No one is holding a gun to anyone's head and taking a hostage and saying, you have to live here. It's voluntary. As all business is, you can choose with whom you would like to conduct a transaction with. And if you don't like my property, or you don't like my lease, or you have a bad feeling about me, or you think maybe I'm being dishonest, you can go somewhere else. That you have that right, that privilege. It's a wonderful thing that we live in here with capitalism, where people have an abundance of choices. And those choices can include other properties.
I have some experience with contracts like that. I signed a contract once. Thought they were offering me salvation, but they condemned me. God damn them. God damn them. They condemned me to an eternal... Hello and welcome to the Eyeball Zone. Here in the Eyeball Zone, we absorb the life essence of small leftist projects to fuel our unspeakable thirst.
This cheese ball.
There is no human being who's ever lived whose ideas have been so thoroughly weaponized against the things they actually stood for as Martin Luther King Jr. If you're sick of people using Dr. King's memory as a cudgel to demand the obedience of the people he sought to liberate, then check out Afro-Syndicalist's video on MLK's complicated legacy and the way that his memory has been rewritten to suit white bourgeois interests.
Okay, so I'm going to leave this in here for the reason that, again, like, I don't have any issue with this person. He has completely different opinions than me, but deep down, clearly, he is a decent person, even though I think his worldview is totally warped. I mean, he's an extremely popular content creator, and he's doing a 2-minute shout out in the middle of one of his videos to a lesser known content creator. And he actually does this in most of his videos because he's probably a decent guy who I think has a great sense of humor, even though I think he's wrong. So it's actually an interesting idea. I've never seen anybody else do it before. So hats off to him for that. But I'm going to go ahead and skip back to more relevant parts of the video that are not this. And again, I'll put the link to in the description of his video so you guys can check it out. And again, leave a comment down below if you think I've missed anything or if I didn't make a good enough argument, because I genuinely want to know what your opinions are. This is kind of a tough thing to actually debate because it's relatively complicated. Okay, guys, I really appreciate you watching that video and watching me dissect it. I'm going to go ahead and cut it there because the rest of his video is mostly about local Toronto, Canada issues, local real estate stuff that's going on. And I'm really not equipped to comment on that, nor do I really want to. So let's talk a little bit about rent strike. I've done a video before where I talked about how tenants and landlords should both do their best to meet their obligation. If you're a tenant and because of what's going on in our world right now with all of this craziness, you've lost your job and you really truly can't make your rent, go approach your landlord and see if you can come to some common ground or figure out a path to help each other. A lot of people are open to that discussion. Now, obviously, there's going to be people out there who aren't. And unfortunately, that's difficult. And I don't have a great solution for you. You're going to have to just try different things yourself. And if you're a landlord and you have the ability to help people, you should try your best to do so. Because this thing has come and kicked 2020 and everybody here in the teeth, and nobody saw it coming. You have an emergency fund. You plan for a little bit, but you don't plan for the entire world economy to just shut down. All right? That's insane. Secondly, yes, evictions happen, okay? If you walk into a store and you don't pay for something, you don't get it. If you buy a car and you can't make your payments, it gets repossessed. If you buy a house and you can't make your mortgage, the bank takes it back. If you are renting from someone and you can't pay, then guess what? You get evicted for it, all right? But let's talk about that rent strike for 1 second longer. Let's hypothesize, let's do a little thought slime experiment, a little thought experiment here. Let's say that you collectively figure out how to get the 10 people in your apartment building to all come together and not pay rent. Awesome. You stuck it to that dirtbag landlord, that class traitor, that guy who's, what did he say earlier? Siphoning the surplus value of your labor.
God, that's a lot of big words. Jeez, what a freaking flex, right? Anyways, let's say you figure out how not to pay your rent, and that landlord isn't getting his rent. Wow. Okay, so what happens? Well, 3 months of that, he can't make his mortgage. The bank's going to take the property back. The bank. Now, you may hate your landlord. The guy may be a jerk. He may be a scumbag. But do you really think that the banks are what they're known for their generosity? The same banks who are so cutthroat that they were willing to lie, cheat, and steal their way out of any recession. The same banks that completely, as Thought Slime put it earlier, turbo screwed the entire economy of the world by decades of liar loans and predatory lending to the point where they crashed the economy with their own greed and reckless. The bank is going to have your back? No. One of two things is going to happen. The bank's going to take over the property and immediately evict you, kick you out, and then resell it. Or they're going to sell it to a different real estate investor, landlord, who has much deeper pockets, who can weather the storm a little bit better, and then they're going to evict you and put in new tenants. And then you'll have an eviction on your record, which will go against your credit, which will go against anything that you want, and it'll hinder you from being able to qualify for the best loans for a car, or loans for, God forbid, you want to buy your own property one day. You're not going to get a preferred loan if you have evictions, or you will, but maybe it'll take 10 years to fall off your credit. If you can pay your rent, do it. If you have a legitimate problem and you can't make it known, ask for help. See what options are out there, because there are a lot of them. And I put those options in another video I made about the same issue. Guys, I really appreciate you watching this. Hopefully I did a decent job debunking some of his claims. I feel like a lot of it is difficult to debate with someone like him because he's so against profit motive in business that really it's kind of like talking at a wall. If you don't believe that anyone should be able to make money, and if you believe that no one should have to pay for anything, well then I guess of course you think being a landlord's dishonest, because you think being any type of business owner is immoral. Again, Mr. Slime, I feel like you might have judged my moral character just a little bit, but I'm not going to take it too personally. The invite still is here. Seattle is a city that I think agrees with your values. So come on out. Let's hang out. We'll see a Sounders game. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that, business isn't that bad. Thanks for watching.